Every single year, more than 400 million frozen dinners are consumed across the United States. Over 1 million every single day. They sit in every supermarket freezer in the country. They have been sitting there for over 70 years. Most people give them about 30 seconds of thought, enough to read the heating instructions on the back of the box. But behind that box is something almost nobody has ever seen. Because a frozen dinner is not one product. It is 5 separate factory processes running simultaneously, each one more technically precise than anything you would expect to find in a food plant. Meat processing, potato preparation, vegetable blanching, sauce production, and the freezing system that holds all of it together. 5 lines, 1 tray, and a cold chain that has to be maintained from the moment of harvest to the moment it lands in your shopping basket. This is how a frozen dinner is really made. The story of the frozen dinner begins not in a factory, but in the Arctic. In the 1920s, a naturalist named Clarence Birdseye was living with Inuit communities in Labrador, Canada. He noticed something that nobody in the food industry had yet understood. Fish caught in -40-degree temperatures froze so rapidly that when thawed months later, they tasted almost fresh. Slow freezing, the kind used commercially at the time, created large ice crystals that ruptured the cell walls of food, turning it to mush. Fast freezing created crystals so small, they left the cellular structure intact. Birdseye patented his double belt flash freezing technology in 1925. The frozen food industry began that day, but it was not until 1953 that the frozen dinner, as most Americans know it, was born. A Nebraska food company called C.A. Swanson & Sons had made a catastrophic miscalculation. After a poor Thanksgiving, the company found itself with 260 tons of unsold turkey, 520,000 pounds of frozen bird, sitting in 10 refrigerated railway cars that had to keep moving to stay cold. A salesman named Jerry Thomas had an idea. Put the turkey on a partitioned aluminum tray alongside cornbread stuffing, sweet potatoes, and peas. Heat it in the oven, sell it for 98 cents. Call it a TV dinner. In the first full year of production, Swanson sold 10 million trays. By 1959, Americans were spending $500 million a year on frozen meals. The industry had been born. In a modern frozen dinner factory, the meat line begins hours before anything else. The protein, chicken, beef, turkey, or pork, arrives as large raw cuts from dedicated processing facilities. In the factory, it is first trimmed of excess fat and sinew by workers and automated blade systems working in tandem. Then it goes to the marinade injector, a machine fitted with dozens of needles that pierce the meat simultaneously, driving a calibrated mixture of salt, citric acid, spices, and binding agents deep into the tissue. This is not for flavor alone. The marinade controls moisture retention during the freeze-thaw cycle. Without it, the meat would shed water when reheated, leaving a dry, tough texture on the consumer's plate. After marinating, the meat is par-cooked, partially cooked to a precise internal temperature using steam tunnel ovens or combination convection units. The goal is not to fully cook it, but to set the structure, develop color, and reduce bacterial load to safe levels while leaving enough residual cooking to complete when the consumer reheats the meal at home. An automatic industrial dicer then reduces the par-cooked meat to uniform cubes or slices, identical in size and weight, measured to the gram, using rotating impeller blades that can process hundreds of kilograms per hour. The cut meat moves directly onto the assembly line. It will not stop moving until it reaches the freezer. Potatoes enter the factory as whole raw vegetables, harvested to specification. The variety matters enormously. Starch content, sugar levels, and dry matter percentage all affect how the potato behaves when frozen and reheated. High starch varieties hold their shape. Low starch varieties turn watery. The factory orders to a specification, not just a commodity. On the line, the potatoes pass through a steam peeler, a pressurized vessel where a brief blast of high-pressure steam loosens the skin so it can be removed by abrasive rollers without wasting flesh. They then move through optical sorters fitted with high-resolution cameras that detect bruising, discoloration, and defects at a rate of several tons per hour, rejecting any potato that falls outside the tolerance. The accepted potatoes are diced or sliced by high-speed water jet cutters, jets of water moving at sufficient pressure to cut through a potato cleanly without the heat and friction of a metal blade, which would cause the cut surfaces to oxidize and brown. The cut pieces are then blanched, immersed in water at precisely 95 degrees Celsius for a controlled number of minutes. Blanching deactivates the enzymes that would otherwise continue degrading color, flavor, and texture even at freezing temperatures. A potato that is not blanched correctly will turn gray in the freezer. After blanching, the pieces are dried by an air knife, a curtain of high-velocity air, and held ready for assembly. Vegetables undergo the most critical transformation on the fastest-moving part of the factory floor. Green beans, peas, carrots, and corn arrive either fresh from contracted farms or pre-processed from specialist frozen vegetable suppliers. Fresh vegetables begin on the inspection belt, a wide conveyor where workers and camera systems remove substandard product. The blanching process for vegetables is more tightly controlled than for any other ingredient. Too little heat and the enzymes responsible for off flavors and color loss remain active, ruining the product in storage. Too much heat and the cell walls collapse, turning the vegetable to mush before it ever reaches a tray. Green beans are blanched at 95 degrees Celsius for between 2 and 3 minutes. Peas require only 60 seconds. The temperature and time are calibrated by species, size, and variety. After blanching, the vegetables are immediately shock-chilled in ice water baths to stop the cooking process precisely where it needs to stop. They emerge brilliant in color, locked in. The individual quick freezing tunnel then takes over. The vegetables move on a vibrating mesh belt through a tunnel where high-velocity air at -35 degrees Celsius blasts upward from below, briefly suspending individual pieces so they freeze separately without clumping. The ice crystals that form are so small they are measured in microns. They leave the cellular structure of the vegetable intact. A pea frozen this way, reheated 3 months later, is indistinguishable in texture from a pea that was never frozen at all. Sauces and gravies are produced in a dedicated kitchen zone that operates more like a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility than a conventional kitchen. Every batch is made to a locked recipe in jacketed steam kettles, large stainless steel vessels with heating elements built into the walls, ensuring uniform temperature throughout the batch without hot spots. The sauce technologist does not taste the product to adjust seasoning. Every batch is tested against a reference standard, the original approved recipe, using spectrometry and viscosity measurement equipment that detects deviation from specification to a degree no human palate could match. Sauce viscosity is critical. A sauce that is too thin will migrate across the tray during blast freezing, contaminating adjacent compartments. A sauce that is too thick will not flow evenly from the dispensing nozzle during assembly, creating inconsistent portions. The dispensing system on the assembly line is a calibrated pump that delivers a measured weight of sauce, accurate to within 1 gram, into each tray compartment in under 1 second. The starch used in the sauce is not the same starch a home cook would use. Modified food starch, engineered at a molecular level, is used specifically because it retains its thickening properties after freezing and reheating, where standard cornstarch would break down and leave a watery, separated liquid in the tray. Every sauce ingredient is chosen not for how it behaves fresh, but for how it behaves frozen. That distinction defines everything about how frozen food is engineered. Assembly is where all 5 streams converge. The trays, made from aluminum foil or CPET plastic, depending on whether the product is designed for oven or microwave reheating, arrive from a forming machine at the head of the line, moving on a conveyor at a rate of several hundred per minute. Each compartment receives its contents from a dedicated deposition head: meat from one, potato from another, vegetables from a third, sauce from a fourth, all timed to the movement of the tray so that each portion lands in the correct compartment at the correct weight. The assembly system is continuously monitored by check weighers, scales built into the conveyor that weigh every individual tray and reject any that fall outside the permitted weight tolerance. A tray that is underweight or overweight is automatically diverted off the line before it reaches the freezer. The filled trays then enter the blast freezer, a tunnel where air chilled to -35 degrees Celsius circulates at high velocity over the product. The core temperature of each tray must reach -18 degrees Celsius within a defined time window. Too slow, and ice crystals grow large, damaging texture. Too fast, and thermal shock causes cracking. The blast freezer is the most energy-intensive piece of equipment in the entire facility, running continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Once frozen, each tray passes through a metal detector before it is sealed, labeled, and cased. The metal detection step is not optional. It is a legal requirement in most markets and a mandatory control point under HACCP food safety regulations. The detector is sensitive enough to identify a fragment of ferrous metal less than 1.5 millimeters in diameter. Any tray that triggers the detector is automatically rejected and held for investigation. The sealed trays are then date-coded, packed into cases by robotic palletizers, and transferred to cold storage at -25 degrees Celsius, colder than the legal minimum to provide a margin against temperature fluctuation during distribution. From the cold store, they move by refrigerated lorry to regional distribution centers, then to supermarket cold chain systems, where they are maintained at -18 degrees Celsius until they reach the consumer's basket. The entire journey from raw ingredient to retail shelf has taken place without the product ever rising above a temperature that would allow a single bacterium to divide. That is the standard the industry holds to. The global frozen food market is now worth over $300 billion. Across all frozen products, tens of billions of individual trays are produced every year. Behind every one of them is the same sequence: 5 factory lines, running in parallel, feeding into a single blast freezer, feeding into a cold chain that never breaks. That is the engineering behind the box on the shelf. That is how a frozen dinner is really made.